Everyone, thank you once again for joining me. I'm Elizabeth Voss, editor-in-chief of Disobedient Media, and I'm here to read you one of our articles. I know that it's been a little while since I've read to you all, but I thought I'd start catching up now that we've had some more news as far as Ecuador's relationship with the United States and its military is concerned. So I will read you our latest article, which is titled Future Uncertain for Assange in Wake of US-Ecuador Military Deal. This is a very short article that I published earlier today, my time, I'll just get right into it. I wrote, late yesterday, Telesur reported that Ecuador had signed a security deal with the United States, which is expected to result in a US military presence in that country. Telesur wrote, quote, Ecuador signed Wednesday a cooperation agreement with the United States to fight transnational organized crime and drug trafficking. Moreno's move is a further shift away from the policies of his left-wing predecessor and former ally, Rafael Correa, who has criticized and refused to participate in the US-sponsored plan with Colombia arguing that peace is not obtained with helicopters and weapons, but rather by promoting economic and social development. And that's the end of the quote from Telesur. The news comes as a new blow to hopes that Ecuador's President Lenin Moreno would heed calls from around the globe to end the solitary confinement of Julian Assange. Tomorrow, the arbitrarily confined journalist will have been totally isolated for a total of 1 month, and that is a really horrific thing. And I've written a previous article on the fact that solitary confinement is torture, and in the way that it relates to Assange, it is torture, and I will read that to you in another video very soon. But the latest news of a military agreement struck between Moreno's government and the US comes as yet another major shift away from the policies of Ecuador's prior administration. It also is a distinct pivot away from Ecuador's decision just months ago which was just a few months prior to confer citizenship and diplomatic status on the Wikileaks editor-in-chief. And this writer previously expressed the opinion that the ongoing solitary confinement of Assange by his own government constitutes torture. Disobedient Media has also reported consistently on the numerous online and physical vigils, petitions, and other efforts to encourage Ecuador to return the Ecuadorian embassy in London to a place of refuge, as intended when the previous administration bravely granted Assange political asylum from threats to his life and work emanating from the United States. And in our previous report, Disobedient Media noted that the enforced isolation is not only torture in the opinions of those who have experienced it, but also has been labelled such by the UN. Rick Ramish, who was included in our previous report, and you can read more about that in the article, which I will also link down below, he wrote an opinion piece published by the New York Times and said that according to the Nelson Mandela rules, which were adopted by the UN, solitary confinement lasting more than 15 days constitutes torture. This means that the length of time for which Julian Assange has been cut off from the outside world has now almost doubled the official benchmark for being considered torture. I think that's a really important point to take into account when we look at the events unfolding between the United States and Ecuador. The news of Ecuador's decision is not only disastrous for Wikileaks editor-in-chief, but also for those concerned that an increased US military presence in Ecuador will lead to an uptick in violence in the region. Earlier today, Telesur also reported that massacres had doubled in Rio in the wake of increased federal military presence in Brazil. The outlet noted, quote, the number of massacres in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil has doubled since military intervention was launched on February 16th, according to a new report by the Intervention Observatory at Candido Mendes University. That's the end of the quote from Telesur's article from earlier today at the time of reading this to you. The deal also evokes worries for some that hark back to the US's involvement and specifically the US Army involvement in Latin America during the 1970s and 1980s and the atrocities committed under the tutelage of the School of the Americas as described by eminent journalists including John Pilger and Oliver Stone in their respective films War on Democracy and South of the Border. And I think another important name to mention in all of that specifically is that of Randy Credico, who has done an amazing job as an activist and a journalist who has fought against both sides of the American drug war, both in the in Latin America and the atrocities committed there because of the U.S. intervention in that region as part of the drug war all the way back to the 80s, and also in the United States. Credico has done an amazing, fantastic job protesting the incarceration of people for drug crimes that is just, as we know, it's been a horrific systemic problem in the United States for a number of decades. So, all that said, I'll just continue reading. So, as discussed recently by Disobedient Media, the geopolitical atmosphere in Latin America is rapidly becoming one of increased military presence, much like that which preceded the chaotic Arab Spring. Additionally, the World Socialist website wrote earlier this month regarding speculation that Ecuador isolated Assange in hopes of strengthening economic ties with the United States. The report related, quote, on March 26th, 8 days before announcing the austerity plan and 2 days before cutting Assange's internet, the Moreno government met with two leading representatives of the U.S. Southern Command, the section of the Pentagon responsible for the military's activity in Latin America. For the meeting, the U.S. Embassy stated Lieutenant General Joseph DeSalvo and Ambassador Liliana Ayalde met with the defense authorities and civil authorities to reiterate Southern Command's commitment to boost and strengthen the friendship between the two countries. So, as Moreno's attitude towards the US military softens, the public is left to speculate that the life of a journalist is being perilously used as leverage in the game of global military empire. And Disobedient Media will continue to report on this important story as it develops. And thank you all for listening. That is the end of the article. I will link in the description of this video all of the relevant links where you can click on, which you can click on in order to sign petitions for Assange, to donate to Assange and his legal defense fund, and the links where you can buy from the WikiLeaks shop and all of that. I really think that right now is the time to support both WikiLeaks and Julian Assange in their fight, because it is more critical than ever. And other than that, I don't really know what to say. You can find me on Twitter at ElizabethLeaVOS. You can also find Disobedient Media on Twitter at Disobedient News. I'm also publishing my articles on Steemit, and so you can find me there as well. And I hope you have an account there. And other than that, we'll just have to see what happens. This is a really, really important, critical developing story, and so Disobedient Media will definitely keep you updated on anything that happens between Ecuador and the United States, and obviously for Julian Assange as well. So thank you, and I'll see you next time.